Things. To be heroes who'd heal our sick, feed the hungry, protect peace among nations, and leave this world a better place. The time has come for a new American emancipation.
And repeat after me. I, Ronald Reagan, do solemnly swear.
I, Ronald Reagan, do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully execute the office.
January 20th, 1981. Ronald Reagan is inaugurated as the 40th President of the United States after dominating Jimmy Carter in the 1980 presidential election. Running on a platform of strengthening domestic economy, Reagan won the hearts of the American population with the help of his running mate, George H.W. Bush. In his first 100 days, Reagan focused on a program of less government and tax cuts, ignorant to the disaster at his doorstep. Beginning in October 1981, cases of lymphadenopathy, a disease of the lymph nodes, began to emerge from homosexual communities at unusually high rates. In February 1982, a study released reviewing 57 men with lymphadenopathy showed that 86% were gay and the remaining 14% were bisexual.
Scientists at the National Centers for Disease Control in Atlanta today released the results of a study which shows that the lifestyle of some male homosexuals has triggered an epidemic of a rare form of cancer.
This disease was initially named GRID, gay-related immunodeficiency disease. After further research and analysis, GRID was renamed to AIDS, or acquired immunodeficiency syndrome, which was found to stem from HIV, or human immunodeficiency virus. What followed was an epidemic infecting 50,000 people in the first 6 years of its emergence. Although it was at the forefront of American culture, Ronald Reagan and his administration practiced a prolonged negligence surrounding AIDS. In a 1982 press conference, Larry Speakes, the White House press secretary, provided a chilling response to questions about AIDS. Through his supposed unfamiliarity with AIDS, Larry Speakes communicated the White House's thoughts on the epidemic. This pattern of ignorance was repeated throughout the Reagan administration for years, until Reagan's first mention of AIDS in 1987 after 25,000 Americans had died. Reagan's administration continually brushed off the epidemic, discouraging any conversation regarding it. Dr. Marcus Conant, one of the first doctors to treat AIDS, was continually brushed off by the administration. When his letters finally got through to the president, Reagan replied with one sentence: "Nancy and I thank you for your concern." Although $12 million was allotted to AIDS research in 1983, government intervention into the crisis remained minimal, with the White House refusing to comment on the disease until Reagan's first address in 1987.
We've made remarkable progress, as you've heard, already. To think we didn't even know we had a disease until June of 1981, when 5 cases appeared in California. The AIDS virus itself was discovered in 1984. The blood test became available in 1985. A treatment drug, AZT, has been brought to market in record time, and others are coming. Work on a vaccine is now underway in many laboratories, as you've been told. In addition to all the private and corporate research underway here at home and around the world, this fiscal year, the federal government plans to spend $317 million on AIDS research and $766 million overall. Next year,
Reagan heavily boasted the lofty $417 million paid in 1987 to AIDS research, all while planning to half that amount in upcoming years. Although Reagan tried to maintain an impartial status, it was clear to see the opposition that had now spread to Nancy, his wife. Both Nancy and Ronald had turned their back on Rock Hudson, a famous friend of theirs affected by AIDS. He died just months after contracting the disease, prompting no response from the Reagan family.
This was his last public appearance on July 15th of this year. Some publicity shots with Doris Day. At this point, he had known for a year he had AIDS. A week later, he flew to Paris for treatment, and the world knew it. Nothing could be done. He came home to die. A frightened Hollywood.
Many close to Reagan have spoken on his homophobia, with his domestic policy advisor, Gary Bauer, saying he was irrevocably opposed to anything having to do with homosexuality. Reagan's neglect did not go unnoticed. In fact, what followed was one of the most triumphant and unionizing events in the history of the homosexual community.
Gay marchers were appealing for liberation. They were also appealing for compassion.
Washington said this is the #1 disease, but they're not giving any money for it. It's absurd.
Homosexuals say AIDS victims are being discriminated against, evicted by landlords, and feared by health workers.
The neglect and stigma surrounding the issue of AIDS led to poor treatment and alienation of the United States homosexual community. Out of the tragedy of AIDS, a foundation known as ACT UP New York was founded by Avram Finkelstein.
Group with some friends of mine. And it was a group of 6 gay men, and we really wanted a place to talk about being gay in the age of AIDS, but I'm talking about 1985. We worked for 9 months on this poster, and we studied every aspect of every turn of phrase. We argued about the color, the exact color of the pink on the triangle. Every single aspect of it had meaning and was packed with meaning for us. It was partly speaking with the voice of authority.
The group, which was comprised of artists and activists, released series after series of powerful posters supporting AIDS survivors and criticizing the actions of Ronald Reagan and his administration. One famous piece, titled AIDSgate, was inspired by Reagan's silence on the issue and used vivid colors to demonize the president. This organization helped to draw attention to the cause, as well as pin a human face on the fight against AIDS. Eventually, ACT UP spread, forming coalitions in Philadelphia and San Francisco. Many gay activists used pamphlets to organize, and on October 11, 1987, thousands of them marched on Washington. They demanded governmental recognition of gay marriage and more AIDS funding. Although most of their requests were denied, protesters helped to further the cause and draw the American gaze to the fight against AIDS. Although the community's pain resulting from the AIDS crisis was immeasurable, a unique unity emerged from the epidemic. Gay communities started to emerge in areas such as San Francisco, and the homosexual community began to develop a more outward and proud appearance after their remarkable fight against AIDS.
On AIDS research, no more delays!
Although there is still no cure for AIDS, it is not for lack of searching. The U.S. government currently spends $26 billion a year towards HIV/AIDS, in part due to today's strong homosexual community. Presidents following Reagan strayed away from the precedent he set, making incredible advances regarding the disease. Under George H.W. Bush, the Ryan White Care Act and Americans with Disabilities Act were both passed. Further, in his presidency, Bill Clinton created the Office of National AIDS Policy and a Presidential Advisory Council on HIV/AIDS. Following Bill, George W. Bush made a huge contribution to the cause, with the President's Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief, holding $15 billion, the most money any country has spent on an international disease. Ronald Reagan's treatment of AIDS did little to stop its advancement in the U.S. and directly impeded many attempts at research. Since its discovery in 1981, over 650,000 Americans have died to AIDS, and over 600,000 live with it today. Although it may be easy to demonize Ronald Reagan and his administration for the lack of responsibility, instead, we should decide to look towards the future and to continue in the search for a cure.